Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining today's webcast. My name is Erica, and I'm a Content Marketing Manager here at GitLab. And real quick, I'm going to just go through a few housekeeping items before we get started. First, this webinar is being recorded, and we will share the recording on our blog and via email to everyone who registered. And we will save questions for the end of the webcast, but please feel free to type them in the Q&A whenever you have one. And that's located at the bottom of your webcast console. As many of you know, we ship a new version of GitLab on the 22nd of every month. And this month, we released GitLab 8.14, marking our 60th consecutive monthly release. So today, we've brought on two great presenters. We have Mark, who's our head of product. And he's been working on bringing you review apps and Mattermost chat commands. And he'll talk a little bit more about that later. And we also have our product manager, Régis, who will demo our first iteration of time tracking for GitLab's Enterprise Edition. And then he'll also tell us a little more about what's next for GitLab. And for those of you who are new to GitLab, I'll start with a quick intro, and then I'll pass it over to Mark and Régis to show us what's new. So it's hard to introduce GitLab without first introducing Git. Git is the leading distributed version control system. It allows developers to store a local copy of their source code, propose changes to it, and share those changes with others. Since each developer maintains a local copy, it's incredibly easy to work offline and merge changes later. So Git was designed for distributed teams that work together across geographies and time zones. But since it's expanded to developers who are just looking for a tool that can help them iterate faster and collaborate more naturally. And so GitLab is built on top of Git, and it's an integrated set of tools for the full software development lifecycle. Our platform includes Git repository management that acts as your single source of truth in a distributed version control workflow. It includes code review and diff tools with tons of collaboration and workflow management features. We built in an issue tracker, issue board, cycle analytics, and a project wiki. And then to help you manage everything, GitLab offers permission management, such as user roles and level of access to change your code. So most of the things on the previous slides are things that you'd probably expect to see. But as I mentioned, GitLab is an integrated set of tools for the full software development lifecycle. So we've built a number of great features and workflow best practices right into our product. We offer a built-in continuous integration and deployment system to tightly integrate testing and deployment into your workflow. We also offer a built-in container registry to store container images. So hopefully by now you're wondering how you can actually use GitLab. And there are three ways to use GitLab. And the first question to ask yourself is whether you're looking for a single tenant solution that you host on your servers, or if you want a multi-tenant solution that GitLab hosts. Assuming that you're in the single tenant solution bucket of Git, you have two options. We have GitLab Community Edition, which is our free open source product, and GitLab Enterprise Edition is our product that is really designed to cater to large organizations. It has a number of features that are focused around things like deeper access and permission controls, fine-grained workflow management, integration with your existing tool stack, and support. All features that we believe large development teams need. And the final option is leveraging GitLab.com, which is our free hosted version of GitLab that actually runs our Enterprise Edition. And so with that, I'll pass it over to Mark to get into 8.14.
Thanks, Erica. I'll just advance the slide. Great. At GitLab, our vision is to offer a product that can take you all the way from your ideas in the earliest stages to actually shipping them in production. We've broken it up into these 10 steps, and traditionally you'd have many independent tools to do this. With GitLab, we want to ship in a single package this entire workflow so that everything you do, you can do within GitLab while collaborating with your colleagues. Now, this is not just our long-term goal. This is our goal to ship all 10 steps within this year, and we're getting closer every release. For the idea stage, we believe a lot of ideas come from chat. So we have a chat client, Mattermost, that ships with GitLab's Omnibus installation. And now in 8.14, we include a new chat command integration, which I'll talk about today. Then we have GitLab Issue Tracker, and we recently released GitLab Issue Board for planning. For coding, we have an integration with Coding, that's coding with a K, that's a company that offers an online IDE. But we're also experimenting with our own built-in online terminal and expect to ship that next month. For committing, of course, we've got GitLab repositories. For testing, we've got GitLab CI for continuous integration and testing, and container registry for hosting your Docker images. For review, there's merge requests and now review apps to see a live preview of merge requests, which again, I'll demo today. For staging, GitLab CI has been heavily extended to include continuous delivery. And for production, we support continuous deployment with GitLab CI. And we now have experimental chat ops integration with Mattermost. And Slack integration is coming next month. For feedback, we recently launched psychoanalytics. And without further ado, I'll pass it back off to Régis to kick off the 8.14 highlights.
Thanks, Mark, and hi, everyone. So I'm going to talk to you about time tracking. A lot of teams and companies use time tracking. It's useful whether you do business with contractors that need to keep track of time, or if you need to provide estimates to your managers and measure your progress over these estimates, or simply to track the time you spent on your work. Recording time has always been painful. You have to use different systems to do it, and even then you don't get a complete picture because your work is in one place and your time tracking data in another. This is why we've decided to release time tracking in beta in 8.14. This is our first iteration on time tracking, and we plan to do more about it in the future. So time tracking is very simple to use. We've introduced a bunch of new slash commands. A slash command is something that you type in the body of an issue or a merge request or in a comment that gets executed when you post the comment or the issue. To enter an estimate, you just write slash estimate followed by the time. Same for the time spent on an issue. You write slash spend followed by the time, and that's it. The time units we support are week, day, hour, and minute. Just so you know, there are a few rules to be aware of. So you can only have one estimate at a time. That means every time you enter a new estimate, we will override the current estimate with the new value. That's not the same for the time spent, though. Every time spent that is entered is added to the current total time spent already entered for this issue. You can, of course, remove time spent from the total if needed by entering a negative amount. Or you can remove time spent entirely by writing slash remove time spent, and that's it. When you enter time tracking data in an issue or a merge request, we store those data in the sidebar along with other useful information. Estimate and time spent entries are displayed in real time as you enter them. You don't have to provide both information to see time tracking data. But if you do, we'll show you a progress bar to indicate how much work has been done compared to the initial estimate. That will let you quickly see if you're on track to ship this feature or fix the problem. So now let me show you a quick demo about it. I'm going to start the screen share. It might take a little while, so hang in there. I'm not sure if you see it. Okay, it's coming. Sorry for the. Okay, so this is a project that will demo this the time tracking. So we'll use this issue. Let's assume that you are the person in charge of making the estimates in your company, and you have to read this issue. So you read the description, and you see that this is going to be a task that will be a very long task, and you estimate at least 1 week of work. Let's say that. So you enter your comment. I think it's gonna be long. Then you write slash estimate, followed by the time unit that you will use. Let's say 1 week and 3 days. You press comment. As you can see here, we are creating an event in the comment feed, and also on the sidebar you can see that we've updated it with the estimate information. Then the next day, you start working on the task. Because you will have a lot of meetings during this day, you can only work on it for 5 hours, let's say, or something like that. So now you record this time, /spend, followed by 5 hours, and let's say 17 minutes, for instance. Oops. Over 17 minutes. Press comment. Again, if you look at the sidebar here, you can see that the progress bar has now appeared. If you mouse over it, you can even see the time that's left to achieve this task. Then, the day after that, I come back and I indicate that I've spent another 6 hours on it. So, I've spent 6 hours. I press comment. And you can see here that the total time spent has been updated with the new information. But wait, actually, that was a mistake. So, I didn't really spend 6 hours on this. I want to reverse this. So, I'm writing /spend minus 6 hours this time to actually remove the time entered. So I click on comment and I see that the time has been subtracted now. Then I come back and I will say that I've spent another 2 weeks on this. And 2 weeks. And here you can see that the progress bar is now in red because you are over the estimate that was initially entered. So can you see how easy the whole process is? Finally, we also offer 2 other /commands to remove the time spent entirely. So let's do that. So I will first remove the estimate. As you can see here, the estimate is gone, and the progress bar also. And I will remove the time spent entirely. And that's it. So time tracking is available for GitLab Enterprise Edition and can be used freely on gitlab.com. Mark, now can you tell me more about the awesome work that we've done with Mattermost?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Régis. So team communication has changed. So much is happening in chat rooms these days. More and more ideas are first discussed in chat. And so GitLab wants to make it easier for you to get your ideas from chat and put them into GitLab issues where they can be acted on. For a while now, GitLab has bundled in Mattermost, which is an open source Slack alternative. Using 8.14's new experimental support for chat commands from Mattermost, you can now create issues and more directly from your chat window where you're already spending your time. Let's jump into a demo here. Takes a moment to buffer, sorry about that. Okay, great. So this is a view of Mattermost, if you've never seen the interface, kind of like a standard chat client. Here I'm in a channel that I've created specifically for this webcast. Could be about a project, could be really anything. And I've created an integration with a command called Webcast 8.14 that actually corresponds with a project on GitLab. So I'll just start by trying to get the help for it. And you notice the first thing it asks me to do is connect to my GitLab account. So at GitLab, we really care about security, and I know our enterprise customers do as well. And so we don't have the chatbot work as whoever created the integration. We use your permissions, so who you are and what your authentications are. So the first step then is to authenticate. So now let's just get some help, and we can see what the commands are. For now, there's really just 3 commands. This is why we're calling it experimental support here. But this is enough, actually, to get us started with our idea to production vision. So let's say we're discussing something, and you're like, you're chatting with your teammates, and hey, we should, change the title of the homepage. And somebody's like, oh, that's a really great idea. Let's just go and create an issue directly. And boom, it just creates a simple, issue for you. I can now click on that link, and we see that the issue is created directly in GitLab for us. And of course, it's done as me, not as some system administrator or something like that. So that's pretty much it. There are some other functionality for chat ops, but I'm actually going to demo that in a moment. For now, I'm going to step back and Talk about review apps. This seems to want to keep the live stream going. There we go. All right, so let's talk about review apps. Review apps are the future of reviewing work. Rather than just looking at code, review apps serve up a fully functioning environment where your app is running. So you get a live preview of every branch and merge request. It's perfect for testing complex changes where looking at the code just isn't enough. Now, with review apps properly set up, an app will spin up automatically for each branch and be destroyed automatically when the branch is removed from GitLab. We're using it with about.gitlab.com, and it's awesome. It's especially great for writers, designers, and product managers that can't or don't want to run a local development environment and pull down each change just to see what it looks like. There's a whole other blog post to it. It's linked on this page, and I believe we'll share those links to you after this. So if you want to read more, go ahead and do that. But for now, let's jump in on a demo. Great, so we're back where we left off with this new issue there. Let's go and pretend we're a developer on this. I'm going to start working on this issue. I'll create a new branch for my work. And I mean, this is just a trivial little website, it's a static HTML site, but it's enough to demonstrate. And I'll go in and go on this page. And commit the changes. And now I'll create a merge request from that change. Everything looks good there. We'll submit that. Great, so now we've got a merge request, and we see that it's automatically kicked off GitLab CI pipelines for this. Let's go ahead and inspect this. We see it's still running tests. Actually, this is an interesting little side note while it's running. I just switched over to our OpenShift console for GitLab. And you can see if I scroll down, if you've never seen this interface, it might be a little bit overwhelming. But basically, it's spun up 2 runner containers just to run those tests. This is all the other containers, you know, the GitLab Rails app, a Postgres database, et cetera. But it's just kind of cool to see the runners were auto-scaling, just spun up 2 runners as needed to go ahead and run this pipeline. Going back to the pipeline, you can see it's finished the tests now, and now it's in the process of actually shipping the review app. You can go ahead and click through if you want to follow along. Again, I'm actually deploying back to OpenShift using it's a Kubernetes cluster. Just happens to be a nice, easy way to deploy things. But anyway, this is where it's deploying. It's building a Docker image for this. It's really just a static site, so it's kind of overkill. But it's building up a Docker image for it anyway, and then deploying to the review app. So while that's building, it's a good time to look at the existing environments, just so you can see what was there before. So I'm just going to take a look at what's on staging. It's just a simple static site again. And production, it's the same thing. Staging and production are running the same thing. Now go back, see where we're at on the review app. Seems to be taking a little while to build this all up. The beauty of live demos is that actually taking a lot longer than it normally should. Actually a pretty fast operation. While we're waiting, I'm just going to go take a look at what the merge request looks like. Here we can see the pipeline is running. It's still in the running stage for review. It's getting a little closer. And there, it looks like it's just finished. And for now, let's go back to the merge request. And we see there's now a system information that says it was deployed to this review app we just created. And here's the URL where I can go see it. And interestingly, it didn't actually make the change. Well, I'm not quite sure what went on there. I'll have to debug that later. But this is the idea. You've got the web a review app created specifically for each merge request, and a link is nicely provided on the merge request. So anybody looking at this, product managers, whoever, they can easily just click through and see what's going on really quickly. And it's a great way to review things. So that's pretty much it. I think there's one other thing I want to show maybe on the OpenShift console itself. If I look at the Webcast group, I can see that there's a production app, and now there's this new app that is my review app, and then there's a staging app as well. And so it actually did spin up a new app in that OpenShift cluster specifically for this review app. So one final thing, the review app is great, but you also need to worry about the rest of the stages here, getting this into production. So let's go back to the review app one more time. I'm going to click through there. Okay, it was actually just a refresh problem. That app name had been there, and so the browser cached it. So hitting refresh, now I see that the live demo is up. Those are the text changes that I wanted that you saw me edit. So going back here, let's accept this merge request. And that will merge all those changes into the master branch. And then that's going to also kick off a new pipeline run to revalidate the CI still passes. And in our case, we've got it set up to deploy to the staging environment automatically. Let's go take a look at the pipelines list. And we see that it has now kicked off, actually it's kicked off two pipelines. One of them is on the old branch, the change title thing. Now that the branch has been deleted, it's now automatically cleaning up that app. And then on master, it's now started testing again, and then we'll go through deploying to, actually we can take a look at what the pipeline is going to look like. So it's going to run its test, and then it will deploy to staging, because master will deploy to staging automatically for you. And just for interest, see if this cleanup. So the cleanup task has finished. And now if I look back at our Kubernetes our OpenShift cluster here, we can see that we're back to only having a staging in production. The app has actually been deleted. It's no longer there. And if I look back at the pipeline, I guess it's still a master pipeline now. I'm looking forward to see if staging has been deployed yet. It does seem to be really slow today. I apologize for that. It's in the middle of building the Docker environment, the Docker image rather, for the staging app. Great, so that looks like it's finished. And so now I just want to show off one final little thing. Even though this merge request has been merged now, it no longer says that it's been deployed to staging because we've deleted that app. Sorry, deployed to review because we've deleted the review app, but it now is deployed to staging. And so we actually provide a nice convenient link to take a look at that directly. Before I do that, I'm just going to take one more look at our OpenShift cluster. I see that the deployment did just finish, and everything's in sync. And so refresh on that, we see live demo again. So now the merge request we were working on, we approved it visually looking at it, and now after it's merged, it's automatically shipped into staging, and now it's running on staging. Production, though, is still behind. So I'm going to show one final thing here. I refresh the environments list to see that we have staging and production. And again, the production is still running the old, and staging is running the new. And from here, I could click on this button that would deploy what is currently on staging into production. But I'm going to go back to our chat window here and show you our little bit of chat ops. So from here, I can actually just issue the command to deploy staging to production, and it will automatically go and find out what version's running in staging, and then know how to actually ship that into production. So it kicked off another deployment, and of course I can follow along on that build. Again, more builds, but basically that's showing how our we come full circle. Review ops are there. After it's been reviewed, we can go back to our chat client where we originally created the issue, and now we can go ahead and just issue a command to deploy that to production. And that's really great because now everybody can see, that, oh, this was deployed. It helps educate new people in the chat room, whatever, but also just helps communicate what everything, what everybody's doing. So we don't have to actually wait for that to finish. I assume you guys can trust me that you'll know that it will go to production, but that's it in a nutshell. So switching back to review apps, that gives you a good demo of review apps, but now I'm going to try something a little bit different here and give you a behind-the-scenes look at how we iterated and shipped review apps over the last 3 releases. A bunch of us at GitLab knew that review apps were really important. Full disclosure, I used to work at Heroku on the team that shipped Heroku review apps. And some of that work was inspired by a tool called Fourchette, which was created by the great folks at Rainforest QA. But even outside of my personal bias, Sid, Camille, and others had seen things like this elsewhere and saw how it transformed a developer's workflow. So even though this wasn't something that a lot of customers were asking for, we knew we had to tackle it. And we knew that tightly integrating it into GitLab would be even more amazing. Now, there are a ton of different ways we could have shipped it. We started months ago, mostly discussing asynchronously on GitLab issues with big ideas which made review apps seem kind of daunting. We had ideas for black magic to detect Kubernetes settings, configure all the review app stuff for you, and make them work only for merge requests instead of for every branch. And it felt like something that might not ship for months, if not years, because of all the complexity and dependencies involved. But then a few of us got together to see how we could simplify, starting with a written proposal, then collaborating in a Google Doc, then a live chat over Google Hangouts. We came up with what we felt would be the smallest thing we could do to enable the functionality. We shared that proposal back on the public issue, And after a couple days, we pushed it even further and really cut scope. Now on the slide, I've put links to a few of the issues we went through, starting with the large meta issue down to concrete proposals, then counter proposal, until finally the winning proposal. At that point, we had reduced it down to just a 1 or 2 seemingly small changes to the GitLab CI YAML format, specifically to let you specify the URL of an environment in GitLab CI YAML rather than just in the web UI, and to let you use variables within the environment name and URL. Trivial, right? One extra keyword and another small change. But that enabled environments to now be dynamic, which is the core of review apps. So we initially offered experimental support for review apps in GitLab 8.12. Then in 8.13, we implemented another key piece, the ability to delete or stop apps. Again, there were all sorts of complex ideas for how to solve this, but we settled on the smallest change possible that enables the feature, and that was reusing our existing concept of manual actions, or jobs that run in a pipeline only when a user triggers them manually, kind of like that production manual action I showed you. And so we said, if you can script how to delete your app, just create a manual action job for it. And then we added a new keyword in GitLab CI YAML, so you could identify which of these jobs stopped the environment, and we displayed a different UI for that. Now you get a little square stop button instead of the triangle play button. Again, pretty trivial. Then most recently, in this release, 8.14, we made it so that we automatically detect when a branch is deleted and run that previously manual action automatically for you. We also realized that with tons of review apps, your environment list might get unmanageable. So we came up with the convention that if you named your review app starting with a common name and then a slash, like review slash, and then the branch name, we treat that like a folder to group your apps by. So the interface can now show a bunch of review apps behind a collapsed folder. Again, a relatively small change. So this really complex, life-changing feature was broken down into 3 releases of the minimum viable product, or minimum viable change. While we say review apps is now complete, it's not finished. In fact, we have a saying that nothing is ever finished because we're always looking for the minimal change and then iterating. By shipping smaller pieces, we not only deliver faster, but we learn from what's being shipped and then iterate smarter. We've now got follow-on issues to look at simplifying the GitLab CI YAML syntax for review apps and even adding back some of that magic we originally envisioned. We'll continue to iterate, and your feedback is key to us shipping better. That wraps up the behind-the-scenes look. Since this is a new segment to our webcast, we'd really love it if you gave us some feedback if this works for you or not. And with that, I'll pass it back to Régis.
Thank you. So, in 8.14, we've released time tracking beta, Mattermost chat commands, and review apps that we've all seen. But as with every release that we do, we've done so much more than that. So let's highlight a few of the things we've shipped this month. First of all, we've continued our work on cycle analytics. Cycle analytics is this great feature we've shipped in 8.12. It's a tool that we think is a game changer. It shows how much time it takes for your team to go from idea all the way to production in your project. Cycle analytics shows 7 stages from issue creation to production. And with 8.14, we've added the latest events for each one of these stages. What does that mean? Well, for instance, in the issue stage, we now display the latest issues that are taken into account in this stage, along with the time each one of these events took. I invite you to give it a try. You'll like it for sure. Another great feature we've shipped is about merge request. At the moment, every time a comment is made on the code in a merge request, a discussion is created. This is part of a process we call code review. There are 2 things you should not do in your project. The first one is that you shouldn't merge code before all tests have passed. We've had a setting for that in GitLab for a while. The second one is that you shouldn't merge code before review is done. And this is what we've shipped in 8.14. You can now prevent merges until all the discussions on a merge request have been resolved. This makes sure only code that has been checked and verified makes it to production. The next feature we've introduced seems small, but is quite a big deal. You now have a single button to quickly delete all the branches that have been already merged in GitLab, instead of having to go one by one as you previously had to do. Just so you know, if you do use the protected branch feature, deleting all merged branches will not delete any of your protected branches. What else have we done? In 8.13, we've released group labels. We think it's a convenient way to manage labels in your organization. With 8.14, you can now subscribe to group labels. That way, you get notified on things that matter to you across entire groups of projects. So what would you even care? Well, you can, for instance, get notified whenever a new issue is made with the customer label across all the projects in a group in order to get a good overview of all the customer issues. We think it's really useful for companies of any size. We've also given more love to our Jira integration. We think our issue tracker is awesome and probably the best in the business. But we also know that a lot of teams rely on Jira every day to organize their work, and we want to help these teams. We've done a bunch of improvements in this release. First of all, we fixed bugs. We always love to fix bugs. Secondly, we now support the remote issue link functionality that Jira provides. How that works is whenever you mention a Jira ticket in a commit or a merge request, we'll add it to the remote issue links in the ticket. So at a quick glance, you will now see all the issues and merge requests related to the issue you are viewing in Jira. Finally, we've added a setting that makes our Jira integration more silent. Before 8.14, every commit and merge request in GitLab that referenced a Jira issue created a comment in this issue in Jira. Now you can disable this setting if you think that's too noisy for you. What else did we do in 8.14? Well, we've improved the look and feel of many parts of GitLab. We've also upgraded Mattermost to the latest release. Mattermost is, as you know, a Slack alternative that shipped with GitLab every month. We've upgraded GitLab Runner, and we've made a lot of improvements of the overall performance of GitLab. If you want to know more about that, there's a link at the bottom of this slide that points to the blog post that describes everything that we shipped in 8.14. So what's next? We are already working on 8.15. 8.15 will mark our vision from ID to production as being complete, so we are very excited to close the year on that note. So here is some of the highlights scheduled to ship in 8.15. I'm going to be very fast on that part because we will describe it more in another webcast. So first of all, we are going to ship the terminal in the browser. Again, I think this is a major feature that we are very excited to ship, and we cannot wait to show it to you. We are going to introduce Slack chat commands, such as the Mattermost slash command that we've introduced in 8.14. We're also going to improve the Mattermost chat command support that we already have. We will make the import from your Bitbucket project even better. At the moment, you can already import your code and your commits, but in 8.15, you will be able to also import your pull request and new comments from Bitbucket. We're also going to put more love on the merge request approval. And finally, we are going to improve the search of issues. As the less time you spend on searching issues, the more time you will have to actually work on them. 8.15 will ship on December 22nd, and we cannot wait to show it to you. That's it for me. Back to you, Erika.
Thanks, Régis. And we do have a couple of questions that have come in. Anybody else, feel free, if you have any questions at all, to use the Q&A section at the bottom of the console to chat those in. Let's see here. Our first question is probably for you, Régis, and it's about time tracking. And the question is, for time tracking, can I see original, current, and remaining? I really like this feature from Fogbugs, along with their forecasting feature.
Well, you actually can, because if you write an estimate, you will know what the original estimate was if you are looking at in the comment feed of the issue. So we'll see the original estimate, but on the sidebar you can also see the latest estimate that has been entered. So not an estimate that has been changed. However, that's a good idea, and I will just create an issue about that to see what we can do about it.
Awesome. And we have another question here for you about time tracking. And the question is, other time tracking tools measure the time an issue remains in a particular lane, so time spent is automated. Can GitLab do this?
Okay. If by lane you mean different stages an issue can be, at the moment we cannot know that. So what I'm talking about here is Redmine, which is another issue tracker, allows to enter different stages an issue can be in. So like review, Q&A, analysis phase, development time, blah, blah, blah. So we think it's an interesting concept, but we need to be very careful not to add too much complexity out of this. But definitely this is super interesting, and there's already an issue about it. So if you take a look at the GitLab EE issue tracker and search for time tracking, you will see that we are already discussing this kind of concept. So at the moment it's not possible, but why not in the future? At least we need to discuss it, right? To see if it makes sense to add it without adding too much complexity. This is really important for us.
Great. And this looks like we have a couple of questions for you, Mark, as well. There's a few questions that came in about review apps, and it looks like somebody would like a little bit more explanation on review apps, and we can start there. And the question is, what is review apps? And this is somebody coming from the business side. Mark, this question is for you.
Sure. So, I mean, at a high level, a review app is a temporary or, ephemeral application that, if say you've got a web app and you've got it running on a staging and production environment, this creates a whole new environment for you temporarily so that you can review it. So, it's an app in that sense, if it's a web app, and it's just temporary for your review. So that's at a very high level. At a technical level, it depends on what your environment is and whether it's a Docker image posted to a Kubernetes cluster, whether it's as simple as a different subdirectory on, that you FTP to, whatever it is, technically underneath is up to your ops team. Hopefully that answers the question.
And our next question on review apps is, how can the review apps be applied to more traditional or non-web applications?
That's a great question. Right. I guess there's two kind of angles to that. One is that, let's say it's not like a front-end app, but it is still a web-based app in the sense that it's like an API or something like that. You could still spin up the application. It's just that you then have some other interface to manipulate it. You can't just go click on a web URL. Review apps are definitely geared towards things that have a front end. So even if we look at a complex application like GitLab CE itself, you probably wouldn't set up your review apps to be able to take Git pushes and all this other kind of stuff because it's just too complicated. You really want to focus on the web pieces of it, which is really where it excels anyway, because it's about seeing the visual instead of the code. But yeah, if you've got a traditional application that's C or Java or whatever, and it's compiled and it doesn't run on the web at all, but it's an installed piece of software, and to be honest, I don't know that it applies at all. I'd really love to see somebody try because I think it's a great piece of workflow. Realistically, what it would probably be is really just you'd create an artifact that you'd download, but you'd still have to obviously install it locally. Now, if you really want to go farther, you could say, say it's a Java thing, you could spin up a virtual machine that might be running it, and then you'd have a URL to go log into that virtual machine that has it running. That could get pretty heavy, but if it's important enough, I could see somebody do that. I guess the same thing could happen with any kind of C or compiled anything. But your review app in that case would be a URL to a virtual machine where you could see the software running. And it could be Amazon, AWS, or GCE, or any of those other kinds of things. But I'd love to see somebody actually do something like that and then maybe submit a guest blog post on how they did it.
We have also a follow-up question from the person who had asked what is review apps. And they said, so it's a temporary testing environment between staging and production. Why not just test in staging? And also, what's the advantage?
So that's great. So I kind of glossed over that, mostly because I've already written a blog post on that subject. But there's a couple of scenarios where that comes in. One is for large teams. You then end up with contention on the staging environment. You know, you've got 5 different developers working on 5 different features. If they want to go and, run it, do some tests or put it in QA or whatever, you end up then needing like a QA stage that's different from staging. And then you end up with like QA1 and a QA2. But even at that point, like, if you've got a large organization and you've got multiple features you want to test out and be able to show them at any time, like the real world case that I would have would be as a product manager, I'd say, okay, don't mark this, issue as done until I've seen it and approved it. And so somebody says, okay, it's ready for review. Here's the URL to go look at it. But then it takes a couple days for me to go look at it. By the time I click on it, it's like, well, this isn't running the thing I wanted to see. What's going on? It's like, oh, well, somebody else took over staging in the meantime. And you're like, okay, fine. And then I have to walk over to the developer's machine and say, pull it up on your local machine, and then I'll watch it live with you. But like that's a hassle. It's nothing else. It's also a waste of the developer's time to just babysit a build just so that somebody else can look at it. And so the idea is, all right, well, we create a whole new environment for this, and then you can have multiple things. And whenever I get around to looking at it, I'll go ahead and do that. But it goes much farther than that. Once you embrace this, depending on how you end up doing it, I had a scenario where we had a system where the review apps actually used production data, so connected to the same back end and everything else, but just had a different front end. I could actually send that link to customers and then say, hey, take a look at this new feature we're developing. It's pretty significant. We wanted to get your input sooner. And we even created beta lists and had like hundreds of people using review apps as like a customer acceptance thing. And it just became so trivial to do that, we would just do that, and it was nice and stable and everything else. So again, like you could have had a customer acceptance stage that's explicit, but then you'd have to go talk to your ops team to provision a server or whatever the heck. And it just becomes really complicated. So it's really just about the ease of use. If you're a small team or whatever size team, but if staging is working for you, then that's fine. But personally, I know from experience, once I've used review apps, I think that you just it just changes the way you think about things, and you're going to come up with all sorts of different ways to use it that you never would have even considered before. So I like to think of staging as really being relegated to just testing, like the final test right before you go to production. And usually it's, you care there about like matching exactly the production characteristics. Like, sometimes you've got bugs about multi-threading and you need to have 2 servers in order to, not even multi-threading, but just whatever, simultaneous something. And you're like, well, my dev environment was a single core, and so I never ran into this problem. But as soon as I actually put it in production, then I had this problem. Well, that's where staging kicks in. You're like, okay, well, staging should have 2 or more machines involved, so that you can detect these really, edge case scenarios. But review apps would be, then that'd be really expensive to put your merge requests onto each of those things. So anyway, review apps are really just easy to use and fast to spin up. And then when you're done, they just disappear. And so it just makes the review process so much better. But I do encourage you to take a look at the blog post on it, and that outlines a lot of the same thoughts, but just hopefully maybe does a bit better job of explaining.
And then I have a couple more questions coming in for you, Régis. One person is just wondering about a time tracking overview, for example, across projects, by user, etc.
Yeah, this is definitely planned for the future. We don't have a date yet, but this is the direction that we are moving to. In a future iteration, we don't have a date yet, but we will release simple reports that will let your team know the different time spent and the estimates on the different issues and the time spent per user, like for last week or stuff like that. But in the future, yes, we want to provide some kind of great reporting function. So if you have any idea about that, please again go to the issue tracker, find all the issues that talk about the time tracking. They are labeled the time tracking actually, and you can participate in the discussion on how we envision having those reports.
Great. And then the next question for you is, how is a day defined? Is one day hard-coded to 8 hours, or is it configurable per project or per user?
Good question. At the moment, one day is equivalent to 8 hours, and a week is equivalent to 5 days. This is how we do the conversion, the different conversions. Of course, there are some countries or culture that are different than ours. So, I mean, some people can work 45 hours in certain countries, or 35 or 30. So, in the future, we will probably allow the configuration, especially for teams that are distributed, perhaps, or stuff like that. But definitely, there is also an issue about it. We will work on it in the future. We didn't want to do that change yet, like now, because that would have complexified the work, and we want to ship in GitLab. We want to ship as fast as possible, the smallest iteration possible. So we've taken those basic configuration out of the way, and we just put like those values at the moment. But in the future, we'll be able to configure that. I'm not sure that it will be configurable per project actually, but probably per instance. But we will have to think more about it. But per project seems a little bit too complex for my taste.
We just have a couple of more questions here. This next question says, in CI, if a package project releases as Docker images and pushed to GitLab container registry, could I set up a manual action that would revert the release by running containers from the previously released Docker image? And I'm not sure, Mark or Régis, who wants to take this one. Maybe one of you can just chime in.
Sure. Yeah, so the short answer is yes. But we actually do something a little bit better than that. Maybe it's even worth showing my screen, but we have, so you know what, I will. Let's see if I can just do this really quickly. So if I look at the staging or production in any environment, if I click on the production, the link to it, I see a list of all the deploys that I've had, and I can redeploy the most recent one in case there's something went wrong. But I can actually just roll back from there automatically. So we basically keep track of what job did this deploy, like let's say deploy number 24. We know which job did that, and we can just rerun that job. Obviously, you have to write your software such that it can do that, but as long as that works, then this rollback button will just redeploy. So in the Docker case, you know, it could be a matter of just taking the existing image that you had and tagging your, retagging it as, latest, or retagging it as, :staging, or whatever it is you do to trigger deploy. Or it could mean actually pushing up that image. If it's Heroku, for example, you're deploying to using Docker, you can actually push up to their container registry from our container registry, and then that would trigger a new deploy. So however the deploy is triggered, yes, you can definitely do that. You don't have to make an explicit job for rollback, though. That's just a matter of, using the existing deploy things, and we just know how to roll back.
Great, thank you. Let's see here. We did have another question come in regarding our chat commands, and the question is, will the integration with Slack allow for this too? Mark, I can let you take that one.
Yeah, definitely. So as we just mentioned, 8.15, we're planning on shipping Slack parity for that as well. The only difference is that since we install Mattermost, we have a little bit more control. And so we can automate some of the things. We don't currently do it, but in 8.15, we plan on making it really easy for you to set up this integration. And with Slack, it might be just a little bit more involved. But once it is configured, all the same functionality should be there. And so, yeah, Slack and Mattermost will both be supported as top-tier solutions.
Awesome. And with that, that's about all the time we have for questions today. Thank you, everyone, for submitting such awesome questions. And really quick, I just want to let you all know, actually, somebody did ask the question whether we would use cameras next time so you can see us while we're speaking. And actually, as Mark had mentioned earlier, we're changing or trying some new things with our webcast. So tomorrow, we're actually doing a live YouTube stream with our front-end team who will give a quick update and talk a little bit more about why we chose Vue.js. And that'll just be a hangout. So yes, we will use cameras and you'll be able to see them as they present. And that link is right there at the bottom. It's a bit.ly link, bit.ly/why-Vue.js, and that will take you straight to the watch page. And so with that, I just want to thank you all for joining us today and for all of your awesome questions, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.